Okay, so if we just want to start by doing introductions, name either the organization that you're with or the group or aspect that you were invited to sort of represent or discuss or talk to you on the phone. And if you're still confused about that, let me know so that we can talk about what we're hoping to get out of the conversation today. So do you want to start over here?
I'm Cassidy Bound. I'm the director of
Matt Steffel, the rescue parks. I'm on the wildlife side. I'm guessing that Joe Riddell with our fisheries side was probably also invited this that's today. So
yes, and he actually sent some responses, so he'll have a little, excuse me, a little bit of input too. So,
Lori Sittercup with Master Naturalist Conservation.
Dan Morgan, Superintendent Scottsbluff. Aaron Mav, Erie Fire Department, and President of Friends for Burn Association for this area.
okay, great. And I'm Elizabeth. I think I didn't meet Lori in person the other day, but for the rest of you I did. I'm a policy analyst here at the NRD, and largely working on the drought planning right now. So I think we'll start by kind of on that first question that was on the Word document. When you think of drought, what comes to mind? You can refer to a personal experience, a drought that you lived through, and really the vivid image that you have in your head from that, or just what you hear on the news, anything that comes to mind when you think of drought. And I'll put some of the characteristics or factors of drought up here for us to refer to as we move into challenges that are related to your sector.
I guess for me, one memory I have from Minnesota and from agriculture, and I remember the time when we were having a drought up there and people were coming around selling cloud seed.
Cloud seeding, what's that?
It's a way to get your money from a farmer without giving them any benefit.
Okay, and how does that work?
They put something in there. They come out and talk to the farmers and convince them to give them money so they can go put something into the clouds to make it rain.
Oh, that's an interesting concept. Okay.
See that in Colorado too. Some seed cloud, supposedly.
Yeah.
municipalities.
So making it rain.
Or something.
Okay.
This one for us in Lincoln, we used to limit our watering of our yards, so agriculture has more water.
And it was specifically so that they could keep ag operations going.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
More aggressive wildland fires. I guess bigger. And more loss, like in 2012, we had our complex fires up in Shattering. The trees were so dry, everything was catching fire. Obviously, it could have been a wet year, and it could have just been a ground fire. But with it being as dry as it was that year, everything was catching on fire. The trees were torching as they were going along.
So you said more loss, like
more
extensive damage. Or...
Yeah, extreme fire behavior.
Okay. Other thoughts on drought and how it looks?
they say shriveled up fields, reduced growth. Brown was supposed to be green.
I guess going back to limiting the water for the yards, it's always the tension between all the different entities as you go farther into a drought.
On the wildlife side, is you're going to see different behaviors in wildlife. They're out looking for food and water.
You tend to see, going back to along the lines what you said, there does tend to be a lot more disease issues within wildlife because of concentration around water.
Did you say
And along,
because of,
They're all concentrating around individual water circle. All populations become more concentrated around a certain habitat. So you get a lot more transmission between individuals.
a lot of times, if it's an extended drought, you also start seeing a reduction in reproduction.
What about different impacts to, I guess I'll discuss that later. These are just some of a simple definition of drought. I don't think any of you were in the drought tournament, but it comes from the playbook that we used for that. And then the little slip at the top is just a few more, and we probably hit on some of these up there. A few more factors or characteristics of drought that we can consider along with all of these that you all mentioned as we go through the discussion today. Okay, so for the main part of the discussion, we'll just start with if you consider your role, the specific job that you do, and then also that job within the larger, I guess we're calling this group the environmental or recreation sector. So all of the ways that drought could pose a problem for what you do, what your sector does, what your organization intends to accomplish. So it's sort of a combining of the factors that are the climatic drought-related factors that we just talked about, and now putting it together with your roles, what you intend to accomplish, and how all of those little aspects could interfere with that. I guess I term it just drought problems. Any way that drought can make your life miserable and make you not succeed in what your organization intends to do. You can also add your personal experience with, landscape management or anything that has to do with the environment, wildlife. I'm not gonna close the discussion anymore. I'm gonna leave it broad right now so that I don't limit you on what you bring up. We're gonna put it up here. As where that challenge would occur for you or whoever it's relevant for. If that happens before drought, if it happens during drought, if it happens after a drought has already passed, or if it's throughout all of them. So whatever challenge that you provide, then we'll put it here and discuss how extensive it is, where it goes. Questions on that? Is that kind of clear, completely unclear? Okay.
I guess for our organization, probably before a drought, and we try to we offer all kinds of different recycling and proper disposal of, household hazardous waste, medication, things like that, to keep all of our water sources clean, so we have them available when we need it. Okay. I don't know how that's a challenge for us, but
Hazardous waste?
yeah, we do. I mean, we have the household hazardous waste event where people can, no commercial, no ag, just household, individual. So it does limit quite a few people in our area of being able to dispose stuff, but we wouldn't afford it if we allowed every farm to bring in all of their oils and antifreeze and chemicals.
Okay.
So then allow, the medication, the prescriptions, a lot of people flush those, or in the past were told to flush those.
Yeah.
And it goes directly into our water system. So,
So if we term that disposal of household hazardous waste, is that accurate?
Yeah.
Where should I put that as a challenge that's currently existing?
Yeah.
As now?
Yeah.
And then how far should that extend into drought, after drought?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe people will see more during a drought. They might see how it's a lot more important to protect our water. Where now, I think some people are, there's a lot of people that just I don't think know where our water comes from, especially if you live in town. You just turn a faucet and there's the water, unfortunately.
So should we put the general public knowing the source of water as another challenge?
Yeah.
That currently.
And I guess going along with that, you have people overwatering lawns, overwatering landscape.
Now, currently.
Currently planting, what they want to see versus an eco-correct, eco-type plant that is going to be more drought tolerant for our area.
So then how would you phrase that last one as a problem? Not planting,
Well, they're not, at this point in time, a lot of people aren't planting the correct eco-type cultivars.
Like the city of Gearing, they used to have a program where they actually, if you wanted to switch your lawn to buffalo grass, they would actually buy you a 50-pound bag of seeds, so you plant that and cut down your water, obviously.
Which they still are doing now, because we helped a person put a new lawn into Buffalo this last summer, so.
so that was cities providing,
Grass seed or drought tolerant varieties.
only grass, or should I put additional, is it largely grass?
Yeah, then like Gearing, I know there's just the buffalo grass is what they're doing. I mean, there's several varieties that can be done.
So over here on this sheet, I'm gonna put strategies. Just in conversation to keep them separate from the challenges that exist currently or could exist, things that are already being done, or if you're already on to our next meetings and brainstorming about things that could be done, to keep them separate over here so that you all will have them to refer to when you do get into the solution creating or cross-sector sharing sessions of the planning.
You want hold on strategies for now, or do you want to continue down this?
Let's keep going with these.
All right.
It's more of if they happen to come out in conversation that, but what could be, I guess, a challenge that comes with that? Could it be, do people know about this? Do they know that this exists? Do they?
That's what I was gonna say. I was trying to figure out if it was a strategy, but it's kind of both. It's just the education.
Okay.
Of drought, because one of the things that we run into is just, people smoking, walking up the trail and, just flicking their cigarette off or whatever, in the middle of the drought is not a good thing.
So just.
So I think some of it is just education of drought, what it means to you.
So general drought education.
Yeah. I think you have a huge part of everybody's comments so far. People don't.
Short memory.
Well, it's short memory, or they just don't think it affects them.
Yeah.
So what if I flush stuff down the toilet? Or so what if I have to water my lawn more to keep plants alive? There's no consequence. They just don't. The pieces aren't matched. The puzzle isn't coming together. I think a lot of that's just education.
I'm kind of amazed at, our last, we had some of the cities around us that were restricting lawn watering. But like the Scottsbluff area, we had enough water. So nobody here restricted it or did anything about restricting it. But why do we wait until it gets to the point where the cities are running out of water to restrict it? I think people would be made more aware of it if they were restricted or had weren't overwatering.
If you think county-wide, when you don't have the county-wide, then you start getting into why do we have restrictions and so-and-so doesn't have a restriction. I mean, it's kind of hard to understand that,
So, but what you were saying maybe over here, something about late response or lack of sort of that kind of restriction or behavior change or policy or something like that pre-drought.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because like in Fort Collins and down there, when you put in a irrigation system for your lawn, they require rain sensors or moisture sensors, a controller on that that will manage the watering of it versus somebody going out and saying, well, I want more water on my lawn and just putting more water. They're being proactive and saying, you've got to do this in a managed way.
Not being proactive with changing water use behaviors. So before I change the sheet, let's look at whether or not these should extend through. So disposal of household hazardous waste. If a drought comes, is it going to make your disposal activities more difficult? Like your process of what you actually do to get rid of it won't, okay. But should we add something about a higher concentration of hazardous waste in water for those people who continue to maybe flush it down the toilets or something like that? Is that a concern?
I don't think so, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Public knowledge of water sources, is that something that is going to continue to be a problem throughout? Something that could get worse in a drought, after a drought?
Once you get into during the battle over who should be first in line and how much becomes stronger. That should be happening pre-planning as to what's your most important source, but it's not typically not until the water starts to disappear that you get the real strong arguments of my water is more important than your water.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe we should add that as a different one that happens in drought, that just knowledge of where water comes from in general currently exists,
Yeah.
but when we move into a drought, then it's going to be prioritization of who gets it and how it's allocated.
Like with the water source, I mean, it may not affect us here, but it could affect someone else, you know, down the way, or vice versa.
The how we prioritize
The
here.
usage, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
and that also goes for us, you know, like with the river upstream.
Mm-hmm. Do we need to add a separate bullet to get at what you're talking about? Sort of impacts that extend out of the area because of how we prioritize?
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry, you do or don't think so?
I do.
Do it needs to be separate? Okay.
Or I guess, yeah, under the same.
So I'm gonna put, or should we put here, just change it, long-term impacts of water prioritization?
Yeah.
Geographic might not be the best word, but that's intended to get at the fact that it's not maybe necessarily just within the district, but that it's going to affect different locations. We can change that if we need to. Overwatering lawns and landscapes is a current problem. Would that extend and continue to be a problem in a drought, after a drought? Yes.
I think, yeah, definitely during. I mean, there's so many people that they just don't care. They want a green lawn. They'll
Okay.
continue to
Continue to
Water.
water that way. Yeah.
And I know there's some cities that do, we can find us, or we use so much water, then the rate went up. There were consequences to using more water, but I don't know. Some people just don't care. I know Gearing raised their water rates last year, I believe, and there were so many people that were upset about their water bills. Well, stop watering your lawn. And
I used to live in a town that had some water quality issues, which turned into supply issues. And you couldn't water your lawn, you couldn't wash your car, basically it was required use only, toilets, drinking, etc. You couldn't do any of the other stuff, more aesthetic.
Not planning, I don't know if ecotype was the word that you used. No, not planting the correct ecotype plant. Is that correct? Okay. Does that extend into and through drought?
Well, when you get into the drought, if you don't have the eco-correct plants, you're gonna need more water to keep them going. A lot of your eco-correct plants are going to go dormant and come back when they get water.
So the not planting is going to be an issue because you're going to be using more water to keep drought.
Yeah.
To keep, and even probably if we run out of water post drought, they're still not gonna. I mean, they're still gonna keep using the water source.
And that kind of goes with our trees too. They may make it through the drought, but then after the drought is when they start dying too.
Okay. And that one we should do. Actually, should we add somewhere in here, or maybe it should just be post long-term impacts to trees, plant life?
I think you're probably largely thinking in cities or urban type areas, but
Yeah.
it does extend beyond that to a lot of our wildlife plans and stuff. We'll try to choose native species because they will hold up better. And then the other part, maybe getting more into Aaron's world, is thinking about some tree thinning or have vegetation management of various types, so that if you were to get a spark or something like that out there, it doesn't turn into a rolling crown fire somewhere.
Well, that's one thing we try to push with like the people that live in the wildcats.
Exactly.
Because probably 85% of those places, if something can see that all those houses are gone.
Yeah.
They don't, trying to get them to
Let everybody knows having the trees by the house.
have drought tolerant, or not drought, well, drought tolerant, but also leading the fire resistant landscaping. The trimming trees, doing trees that they're gonna plant trees, plant some that's gonna not burn up and also can kind of do well in dry periods, but. So I do landscaping and whatnot on the side as well. And it's one thing I push hard out there, kind of like for the Firewise communities, but I did not hear from one person on that. And they just really don't care until something does come through there.
But we're still north, even after it does go through, well, I made it through that one, I must be okay.
Yeah,
They were thinking about while the smoke was going, as soon as it stopped.
This should probably be lack of fire resistant landscaping.
Yeah.
Is that a problem that's going to continue on through drought and after drought also?
yeah, it's gonna go as long as they don't do anything about it, it's gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it could be a loss of their property, their home or whatnot. Just like the last week in there on north side Lake Matani, the houses that had a good area around the homes, those maybe survived, and the ones that had trees up right against the house and this and that, those will burn down.
Okay. General drought education, and this should probably be lack of also. Should that extend through all of them? Okay. People don't think that drought affects them. It could be a problem all the way.
Yeah, because I think they probably think, well, I'm not a farmer, you know, so I don't have to worry about it.
And so does that get at what you were saying, Matt, about, you know, so they survived the drought. So even at this point, they still don't think it affects them because, well, I made it through. So that's encompassed in this then.
Post and pre are very similar. It's not in front of their mind at all.
Okay. I was
And
gonna,
which all goes back to your education and so on.
A lot of people think, you know, around here, only everything affects the farmers. If they have nothing to do with that, they don't have to worry about anything.
no proactive change of water use behaviors.
You know, I think you get a little bit of that during the drought, but not as much as you probably should.
Okay. Or is it possible that a drought would actually, I mean, I guess where we have the word proactive, it's not really relevant, but that a drought would actually encourage people to change their water use behaviors. That maybe since we have proactive, that's just a problem now, but we need to rephrase and put another problem
It
here.
might be regulatory at that point.
Oh, that there's no
Well, worse,
regulation.
beforehand, trying to convince people to do it. In drought, you turn to you can only water every other day,
Okay.
or you can't water any longer, whatever.
So then how would you phrase that as a problem? Because I can put regulation of watering over here as a strategy, but we could put lack of regulation. So we're not proactive about it. We continue to not regulate it during drought. Maybe do that one.
You know, going on what you said about, you know, the water only affects, the agriculture only affects this and doesn't affect us. It's also the economics of it, because we're in such an agriculture area that when drought starts affecting the agriculture portion of it, it starts affecting the economics throughout the whole area.
Okay. Here,
Yeah,
impacts to,
There's economic impacts that I think people understand.
Because like in my world, you know, if they're forecasting a drought year, you know, not on the economy side of things will go up, but people may not plant pivot corns if they can't gravity irrigate, or they may not do certain fertilizer or chemical applications just because of the lack of water. So I mean, that's gonna affect the company, which, you know, employ a lot of people, which shop all over town, you know, so I mean, it kind of trickles down, and for the economy, that's what it does.
Well, and if you don't have that, and you harvest, if you don't even have a harvest, people that are employed during harvest time, they're not employed.
I've been sitting here trying to figure out how to express just the general, almost a depression thing that ends up. I was in Chatham during that pre-2012 stuff, and all around town, ag economy was in a slump. everybody on the volunteer fire department was just flat out worn out from being called out dozens of times a month. Because the ag economy sucked, nobody was spending money in town. It was just a trickle down thing that over 3 years, everybody was kind of hurting in one way or another. And you look around and everything's just bleak and brown and kind of an ugly landscape. And overall, it was I think a mental thing for almost everybody in the area. It was a very different attitude to town.
Back to some of them that you had said before. Someone mentioned that people think that drought only affects farmers. Is that something that's encompassed in the lack of general drought education? Or is that something that needs to be added up here separately? Okay, we'll leave it up there for home and property loss due to fires. Should we add that separately? We have the lack of fire resistant landscaping, but then another
Falls within that one.
that it's covered in that one. But even if if you don't have a fire, then it doesn't matter whether or not.
Yeah, I mean, like during, there's nothing really other to do, just to deal with it as it comes.
The fires or the lack of the landscaping.
The fires and the landscaping, that can be
Mm-hmm.
done anytime. But the fires, and that's gonna be,
That's when your loss takes place.
yeah.
But I don't think I put just fire up there. Just a little public knowledge. So maybe we need just that fire as a result of drought or increased by drought.
That might be good because beyond the homes, you loss of rangeland, grazing infrastructure, everything else. as
Right,
well.
that would lead to a lot of.
It's true, it's more than just the house. It's more holistic.
Let's see. Was that going to be a challenge post-drought also?
No. Well, I guess, I mean, the rangeland, it's gonna be an economic cost on the landowner, because he's not gonna have that grass there to range or eat on, so.
So maybe I should
Define post-drought, how far out is that? Immediately after, drought, yeah, it's gonna take a while. It's gonna take one growing season basically to get or more to get range back. So, the post-drought, it probably does because it's not immediate. It's gonna take some time, so that part of the project does go into.
Okay, so this one will extend more on like the environmental basis that it's going to take a while for the grass to come back. This one we can extend on the economic basis that the farmer or producer has now lost the use of that, so it's going to impact them.
So even without fire, a lot of
Financially.
times it's a couple of years before that reaches.
You also have the wildlife aspect of when you do have the droughts, when you have the fires and stuff. It's gonna be a while before you have the population back so that your hunters or people who want to see the wildlife will be enjoying that again.
Okay. So this one is really just sort of huge. I don't know if you feel the need to unpack that and you want me to list out, like you talked about businesses, you talked about just here the hunting, that kind of thing, or if it's sufficient to have up here that all of that is impacted.
I think the wildlife will probably merit its own.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Because I think the local economy, we're kind of focusing on the ag part of
Yeah.
it, that there is a whole wildlife component to that.
Sure.
People grasp either all the time.
Okay. Okay, so do you want me to start with what you said about, and I don't think that was covered, well, we covered it in the drought, the reduction in wildlife populations, or,
Probably a 2.1 impacts on wildlife populations. And then 2, tying it back to the other stuff, the reduced economics from outdoor recreation, whether it's locals or hunters coming in from elsewhere. Probably both that would be during and post some period. Reduction in outdoor recreation or economics of outdoor
reduction in outdoor recreation opportunities,
both the opportunities and the,
which then,
there's a social value to the opportunity itself for locals, and then there's the economic value for both locals and visitors. Scottsbluff certainly benefits from drawing people to town based on everything we've got around it.
I actually think we like the road.
and you said into post?
Yes.
Okay. So several of you have mentioned the fact that people just don't care. They don't care if they have to find more water or use water more extensively. I don't know if that is also part of the general education part, or if that's a different sentiment that we need to put down, that there's a lack of concern for the environmental aspects, maybe in general, maybe it's maybe it's specific to drought. And I'm not sure what you would call that, or if you all feel that it's covered in some of these other ones. Lack of appreciation of environmental resources.
It's kind of so much of a cultural thing because we are, we want what we want now, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
More needs to go.
So is that a feeling of entitlement? Is that a feeling of, what would you call that? I agree that it's cultural, but I think that it should be written here because, and also in the it exists now that whoever does within the population, if they feel that way and that motivates how they use things now, and then things become more scarce in a drought, I think that can only get worse. So I think that it's important that we note that sort of behavior or sentiment now.
Cultural minds.
And it goes along with education. Just general, I think people are getting a little better, or some people are getting a little better. So it's more just keeping on educating to what we need, more programs like with the city of Gearing and getting out and being known that, buffalo grass is our native grass or a native grass of this area. And there's no perception. I don't have to have a green lawn in March to November 15th.
What about cultural mindset of unrestrained use? Does that sound accurate? And that warrants the need for education. And pre and extending through. Okay, other things. Is there a need to talk about if drought would impact your funding for the different activities that you have to do? If you would get less funding, if you would get more funding, if I don't know. Again, this is going to fall on you because I'm not familiar with the specific projects and stuff that you undertake. But
For our agency, particularly reduction of wildlife populations, means less hunters, less permits, probably less people using the parks. All of that results in reduction of budget.
do I put Game and Parks budget? Can we extend it to, I don't know.
would be for conservation where we depend on donations and stuff. That'd be
Yeah. So
less.
If you get less people out enjoying it, they're not gonna be thinking about funding it.
Does that go into post-drought also?
Probably not real far. Well, somewhat. Once wildlife populations rebuild, then it would not, but you would have a lag time there. For instance, the Pine Ridge area, our deer permits up there because the numbers have been reduced by about a third. So it's a pretty substantial shift in that. We're 5 years out now and still not recovered.
I promise all of these will be typed out so you can actually read them and know what they say. What other areas do you think we're missing as far as drought and the environment? If we also want to get into recreation, other types of recreation in addition to hunting, how that would be impacted.
Like Miniature, for example, Game and Parks probably wouldn't have as many people off the lake, so that not as many people buying park permits.
Okay.
We do have a lot of people who come from out of state,
Mhm.
camp at like winter.
And
A lot of people can call that.
and Lake McConaughey, you know, it's another busy one for out-of-state people.
Now, to a certain extent, lower lake levels like in McConaughey mean more beach and more users too. But
Yeah, catch 22 is
to a certain extent, those are still water for them to use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full lake like this year is actually helpful.
But on the flip side, it's kind of interesting you say that because that is an impact.
Mhm.
And I think we always look at the negative. In that respect, it's kind of positive because you do get an increase in sales, but that many people out there can have a negative impact also.
So should I put reduction in people to local lakes for water sports, yet possibly an increase for other lake activities? How would you like me to, and I can start again too. How should we narrow down the first one maybe so that it's only a negative and we can also put the positive? I can put change.
Probably reduction in the population for water, your water sports, but then I guess the other one is for beach activities.
And then should we like here until water levels increase or until?
Till the water levels stabilize.
Do you have other activities out at the monument that you could see any sort of people doing or not doing as a result of drought?
I could see maybe, I mean, driving down the road on a dry year, you know, throw a cigarette out and cat burns, you know, they, actually, the people may not want to go out there with black, you know. So it's gonna cut back the money, I think, you know. After we burn it on the south side of the highway, you know, a lot of people are complaining, you know, because it's black.
It's trying to it needs the rain tonight really bad.
I just tell you to get a little bit. Yes.
So reduction in visitors due to the lack of aesthetic appeal of the monument.
Yeah, it could be that. And I mean, if it's a severe enough drought, I mean, you know, see it happening. You know, I mean, we have certain restrictions we have to put in place. Maybe nobody on the trails or something. You know.
Okay.
So there.
For this one, do I need to put a monument or can we leave that general? I mean, visitors to the area as a whole, if we're dried up and not very attractive.
I would, because I've seen it where it's people just don't want to come because everything is brown or whatever.
Right, brown and
And we're
throw
on
some
the other
fires
side.
on there and then.
Well,
no
we're on the
one
other
else to
side, going,
see.
oh no, come on out, we still have other attractions to see, So I think there is that. I think that would be fine to leave that.
But another fact, like Crawford with Fort Ross and then I get fossil beds.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to think more than just the money, because they're also kind of area, but yeah, I can see it. And it does happen. Visitors just,
Really, within your area, then you get into the fall hunting seasons, you have a lot of rock people that would normally come in for waterfowl and so on.
right,
Who would probably, if the river was a trickle. Regional thing.
You know, in the mentioning of the burning of the monument, and that goes back to education. People don't realize that fire is a management tool to, for the area, for the weed control and stuff, but also for fire in a drought or just general fire. So it's back to educating the public on how to manage our resources. I think there with the pine wood beetle too, because we didn't manage and, we let too many trees grow too close together. We had stress, which caused.
the education part is multifaceted.
Yeah, I think if we get time, we should probably delve into that because, like you're saying, there's different needs that they all apply to drought, but maybe they would come beforehand or in the middle, and that's important.
Well, I think for the purpose, if you're wanting to do this for a plan type of thing, I think those would be key components to have out there that you would have some guidelines for folks
Sure.
to move forward.
Trail use, do I add? I'm not familiar with what other access people have to public lands that Game and Parks has or not. If
You might just put / off-road activities, hiking, biking, you got ATVs,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. I know, drought, there's restrictions put in there. You don't want tall grass and hot mufflers off the ATVs.
Should these extend into post-drought? The restrictions and then also the possibility that visitors might continue to not come to the area.
The reduction may not, because that's gonna be temporary, but maybe it's gonna have a financial impact on whatever location, not getting the visitors that normally goes.
Okay.
The restrictions, as soon as everything's good,
It's wet. I'd say the restriction stuff probably not, because if we're saying post drought, that means we've gotten some moisture.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
that usually triggers a release of the first one. The second one might have a little bit of a lag time.
You're planning your trip ahead or anything like that.
Yeah,
But is this covered in our bullet over there, the local economy, and the trickle down?
Could be.
yeah.
That it's covered enough in that one.
do you think you get funding off like a certain number of visitors coming in? I guess something like that over here, or?
Yeah, we have our fee program, so
Okay, and that's what you're referring to.
Actually,
is-
for that purpose, yeah, it would go into post,
Okay.
because that's, a year lifetime.
Mm,
For the post, I would say it would just be for, probably 1 year post, or 1 year post. Name hand or something.
Okay.
Because you have to define what post drought is, you know, I mean,
Yes.
you kind of get into it, then you have, you know, or the
Mhm.
7 inches of rain for the next 3 months, I think we're out. Like, you guys have development.
You'll look forward to me, or maybe already have Annie Volk that's with the City of Scottsbluff planner. She's also very interested in creating this scale of, well, how do you know? Is it drought? Is it not? How do you determine, are we in it? How bad is it? That kind of thing. And so that was something she talked a lot about yesterday in the group that we did. And we agree that, I mean, that's important. Otherwise, how are we all going to assess things equally if we don't even have the same definition? So very important. So sorry that we're kind of floating out here in space, but hopefully we'll get to that point of having something that we can all use. See, I should look at what Joe sent us.
You will need to know, yes, you probably need to tell me.
So Joe Rydell with the fisheries, I don't know if it's a department, Matt, or what that would be called, but with Game and Parks Fisheries, wasn't able to make it today, but he sent some responses to the questions that were on the Word document. This one is regarding how drought has negatively impacted your organization in the past. He said that low water hurts our fisheries and makes access into lakes and rivers difficult. We see an increase in fish kills both summer and winter. Also parasites and vegetation. Low or dropping water levels also can result in reduced recruitment and missing year classes of fish. Maybe we should add some of those topics about, and also, you know, from your own experience with fishing lakes, that kind of thing, we can add some.
A lot of the dynamics on that are fairly similar. You might work in the place where you have wildlife populations and such, and you might just be able to see fish and wildlife. I mean, if you'd like to have it as separate, I'm fine with that. You're trying to condense a little bit.
I guess I'm looking at this increase in fish kills.
Okay.
What, and I might not be understanding, fish are being killed because of parasites and lack of vegetation.
No, fish kills are typically a lack of oxygen, or as you're concentrating down any imbalance in water or anything like that, it's going to have much more drastic effect.
Okay,
So,
okay.
So pools will be dried up, so the
It's not
concentration of fish go to deeper pools. Consequently, usually overpopulation.
I see.
Warm doesn't hold the oxygen as well either.
Okay.
So it kind of goes back to the wildlife where we had the higher concentrations.
A little bit.
Where was that? And you're saying I can just add.
Well, if you're trying to go broad categories and capture a lot more, you could probably combine those. If
I don't think we had it on our drought, the first one.
Okay, so it's nice. We have reduction in population, but we don't.
okay.
Okay, so here, higher concentration of wildlife. Anyway.
So then would that have effects? I'm sure it does, but I don't know how you gather the eggs and stuff, or like when the drought, post-drought, because there's fewer fish to harvest, or do you guys have, are you
Typically,
harvesting from capture? And,
we're mostly harvesting from existing lake. But part of what you're referring to there is when you set up a lake, not trying to sustain a population that is so high it's going to get impacted if the lake level drops. Then, so I get more on your natural recruitment, so I'm trying to have a more healthy population there. He probably is talking a little bit about ones where they do a put and take thing, but on that, it's we've got enough other places within our own state and other places, unless there's a full Midwest drought, you're always going to have places where you
So do I need to add anything else, or
I think you can pretty well cover it.
okay with what you're referring to? Okay. You know, Cassidy, what else do we need to talk about in regards to your activities? I feel like maybe we do you deal with stormwater also? Are there things that we should add on how stormwater in particular should be considered?
I mean, that's another just education, keeping your storm drains clean, not over fertilizing, keeping the fertilizer off the sidewalk. Because it does go, it goes directly into the river. There is no treatment, I guess, yeah, to our storm drains. So it's, it's kind of part of proper disposal of waste, not changing the oil in your lawnmower when it just went down the drain, which happens unfortunately.
Should it be maybe more appropriately if I add it to our list of educational topics?
Yeah.
Things that need to be considered in general.
And when you talked about that, just people being educated to have a bioswale or a rain garden so that all the water coming off of their roof doesn't immediately go down into a storm drain.
Okay, and Lori, you as well. I don't know if we've touched on all of your activities or if there's more that we should be adding from your experience with master gardening or landscaping, or I don't know. Again, I'm not familiar with these topics, so I'm gonna have to rely on you heavily I just don't want to miss anything that maybe we've kind of focused on broader recreation, wildlife. We did water usage. There's some landscaping up there.
I think, primarily, the education of the overwatering of landscaping, using the correct plants for our area. I think those kind of take care of a lot of that can be put into those kind of areas.
Okay. Okay.
And I think an important issue is the rain gardens, bioswales and stuff that the city of Scottsbluff is doing needs to carry through to our other communities. Just going down the Scottsbluff Erie Highway today, I see another business putting in a concrete slab where they could have been doing some kind of a rain garden to catch the water from their roof and to get it back into the ground rather than just putting it down the storm sewer.
Okay. And Erin, have we talked about all that's needed in regards to fires, fire management? Also, I don't know if there's anything additional that we need to add regarding Pheasants Forever and activities with that organization, or if that's covered in sort of the wildlife management there. Just make sure that we get everything.
The deal with the drought, yeah, it's gonna come back on pheasant population, but
Okay. Is that covered in here, that the insufficient habitat, not habit? Insufficient habitat leads to death in fish and wildlife or an altered reproduction cycle.
yeah, I mean, I don't know so much on the actual pheasant side of it. I'm more on there just for the fire side.
Oh, okay, I
Um,
see, okay. All right,
But we're using fire to improve our habitat. So I mean, after a drought, say a fire were to go through an area, it's gonna benefit
oh,
that habitat.
okay,
In this area, will so much not in Pine Ridge, because they need those trees.
okay. So that's what you both were talking about, using fire in a beneficial way that people also don't. Okay.
We gave parks in years past and the Wildcats they've done, or we've done burning for them where they burn certain areas of the Wildcats. So in case you get a bad year, say the drought lightning strike starts a fire, it hits that spot, it's gonna slow it down and you can have a better control on it then. You can actually go in and put a fire through an area to help down the road in say 2 or 3 years.
Okay. And I think those are also with the beach deal on Lake Minnetonka, these sort of benefits that can come from drought. If you all would just hold on to those and remember them until we start doing the cross-sector sharing and also the solutions, because that'll be where those will really come out. Since we're talking about challenges largely today, but those are definitely still important to remember that can happen too.
And with our wildlife, we talked about wildlife, the fish and stuff, but our insects are affected too.
Okay.
We'll have less mosquitoes, but your bees will be, and butterflies and stuff will be affected because they don't have the puddles to go to.
Okay. Here, starting in during.
Fewer pollinated plants as well.
Yeah, fewer pollinated plants, yes.
All the pollinators are being affected.
And it's largely just by the lack of water sources for them, or is it additional factors that are?
Well, it's not water, it's if you don't have the water, you don't have the flowers, whatever those flowering species are, don't flower as much, and so there's no food for.
No food, no drink, kind of a tough life.
Yeah.
Kind of tough out there.
Okay. And that extends on until the sort of the food sources recover and the water returns.
Yeah, depending on the loss,
Depends on really the duration of the drought, because if it's long enough,
you could lose a
you
species.
could. I was gonna say, if it's
Okay, so
if
it
it's
really
a 5
extends.
if it's a 5 to 7 year drought, you're going to lose.
Okay.
You're not lose, you're going to greatly reduce its population. And that has just a huge trickle down, because it can be insects, which affects bats and birds, and you know, I mean, it's very tight.
Which there too, when you were saying that, it could lead into, like everything is dependent on something else, where we had the black-footed ferret, because this ended up happening in their environment. If you have a long enough drought, you may have restrictions in the fact that one particular piece of wildlife is being so affected.
So kind of like we did with local economy, do we need a bullet that's just local ecosystems? It's going to sort of tear through all of them. And the smaller, especially those ones that are.
We talk all about environment, whatever, but just thinking out loud,
Mhm.
there are impacts to industry.
What kinds of industries?
I don't know, it is there, you know, we talk a lot about the environment, whatnot, but as far as the drought, you know, is that happening? Which would kind of go back to the economy.
Yeah.
In like 2000, after 2012, the pivot industry around here was booming, and there's pivots going up everywhere, you know.
So again, one of those sort of beneficial for them. I mean, they got to sell more pivots, but at the same time, the industries were impacted. And you can feel free to add whatever ideas you want on that. There's also the Ag and Industry Group, and they were pushed to discuss that specifically. So that'll be brought together. But I don't know, I guess if we wanted to look at how changes in what maybe manufacturers or those types of industries are doing could then again continue the ripple effect of harming the environment, like because of a drought, if the sugar factory is forced to change how they operate and that is somehow bad for the environment. I don't know how, that's not my area of expertise, but you know, if that's a possibility.
We'll just leave that.
You don't want to go that far
No,
either,
no,
huh?
no.
Okay. Okay, well, let's take a break unless anyone has anything on the tip of their tongue right now. Let's take a break. There's snacks and coffee and water there. The restrooms are down the hall and on the left. And then I'll come back and finish up. About 15 minutes.
Did you? Yeah, I'm there.
Thank you. Kind of loud out there. So with this one, restrictions on trail use, hiking, biking, anything or any sort of off-road activities. Who within the district is that going to affect? Or whoever might be in the district at the time if they're visitors. But.
Park service and game parks.
Putting the city trails along the river and such be. I don't know if down that area would ever get dry enough that they would have restrictions on use. It'd have to be pretty nasty for that.
And then should we put like outdoor enthusiasts or whoever would be interested in using those activities? Anyone else that needs to be listed there? A reduction in visitors to the area due to lack of aesthetic appeal. That reduction, who would that impact?
Local businesses.
I think we put that, I mean, this was up there in regards to your funding.
It's probably gonna be on about every topic here, the local business part.
And in the local business, you're talking about the individual employees also, because they're not gonna need as many employees,
Okay.
which is local business, but it's the trickle down effect.
Basically, just overall, it's going to be the operation of those local businesses, because it's going to be, could potentially be inventory, staffing levels, number of things.
So then also customers. Like if your restaurant's harmed, I mean, and then you can't go to the restaurant. So we're talking about this from the business standpoint, but then also continuing the ripple effect. So if there's no visitors and business goes downhill and they start laying off people, and then that business eventually closes, and then the person who goes to the restaurant can't go to the restaurant anymore. I mean, I don't know if we should just put everyone at this point.
Well, I think as long as we understand, when we say local business, it's not just,
Business
it's
owner.
just not just co-op.
Yeah.
You know, it's, if it's a long term, it affects the
Yeah, especially the
entire,
grocery store.
right, it affects everything,
Okay.
Well, and it affects,
the people.
the city and the state too, because the
Right.
sales tax going into the economy.
You know, we say local business, it's a big broad.
But when this does happen, it's not just like, it happens in our area, it's like a regional deal, so it's gonna affect everything, so it's gonna have a much greater impact.
Insufficient habitat leading to death in fish and wildlife populations or altered reproduction cycles. Who or what does that term?
And it's gonna be outdoor enthusiasts and potentially local business.
And we, go ahead.
In all of this too, you're looking at, people graduating from college and stuff with the degrees to go into wildlife management, to go in those different areas or go into conservation. There's going to be less hiring at drought time because there's not going to be any income in those places.
And that happened to me. I went to college for golf course work management. 2010 when I was coming out of that, and the whole golf, we're kind of starting to get in that drought there, and it was affecting the golf economy. So there was no jobs up in the Rocky Mountain region.
Okay, so we'll put job seekers here. Now we'll go both here and to that one as well. And this, let's not limit ourselves to people. I mean, here we have the habitats, the wildlife, the fish, all of those can be, relevant populations that this is going to, that this concerns, even though it's obvious in this statement. If it's not obvious in other statements, we can still put, the specific wildlife populations that are going to be. Bees, butterflies, pollinators are affected by a lack of water, flowers, or food sources.
Well, it affects everyone. Without bees pollinating, we don't have, eventually we don't have food.
Okay, yeah, Yep. Okay. This one was more broad, kind of on that one. Local ecosystems are harmed or changed. Everyone? Is there a population that would be affected enough that it's important to distinguish?
Well, it all depends on which ecosystem is damaged, or, you know, is damaged the most, or what,
Okay,
if something is becomes extinct due to it.
so then the specific animal population?
Yeah.
Or were you still, are you thinking? That's not right. Yeah, sounds pretty broad, but disposal of household hazardous waste.
That doesn't affect everyone, and, I mean, it affects our water quality. Worst part is we don't have farmers don't have any way to properly dispose of stuff in our area.
Well,
They
do.
can't hire someone
It
themselves.
just costs so much money to have Clean Harbors come and get all that stuff.
Individually, and they won't do it individually.
No, 'cause
And locally, you know, the highest bid was locally. There's nobody that does it locally, so they have to subcontract with everyone.
because having growers spend money the last few years is really tough. That's not on priority to spend money on, so we're not gonna worry about it.
And so it just keeps stacking up, so then it costs more and more eventually.
Or the gym gets a hold of it.
Yeah, and then if that's open, and, yeah. Well, that's the thing too, is, Clean Harbors will take it, but it's contaminated with anything, if the jug has been open. Contaminated with rainwater, or something, I don't know, I've had a lot of phone calls out here. Well, you know what I'm gonna do with it if you don't take it? Well, I can't put 50 gallons of oil in my office, so please don't just dump it.
Well, there too, you see so many times when you see a trash fire out in the country, it's got the plastic jugs in it, all those other things that are eventually going to leach into the ground.
Lack of public knowledge of water sources. We need to add more to this as to why it's a problem. Is that evident in some of these other ones that relate to how people use water then? Or is it okay as is?
Maybe able to feel that people don't think drought affects them, maybe have municipalities have like different levels of, they were moving into a drought, and they got different levels, whatever it may be. It's just kind of there to get people in their head, this is where we're going and this is what you need to do.
So with this one, put municipalities that that they're going to be impacted because maybe, they're the ones that regulate domestic or in-home water use, and they don't know where that water comes from.
At least get people thinking that it actually does. Back then, I mean, if you're, say we're in the mid-drought, but it's not too bad, they get step one or whatever, as you get into the extreme drought or exceptional one, they got different stages in between there, and they let that be known to the residents,
So then district residents here would be on the other end of, so there's municipalities doing the educating, but then there's the public or the residents that are receiving that education.
That's the way you tell it's so bad, saying, no, don't water your grass, You have something building up to it, so they're paying more attention to it.
Going along to education too, I had a person in a class just say, well, we don't have to worry about water around here. We live on the largest aquifer. That is, some of the people's mindset. We live on top of this aquifer. We can take as much water as we want. So just to educate people to know that we've got to make sure that stays clean too.
Is that encompassed here, or do you want me to add another one that deals specifically with living with the aquifer under us, cultural mindset of unrestrained use?
That's fair.
Yeah, that goes under there. Okay. All right. Overwatering lawns and landscapes. Who is involved in that? Who is harmed?
Well, I guess in overwatering landscapes, lawns and landscaping too, you've got over fertilizing too, which then gets washed off into the stormwater.
People that overwater, the ones that really care about their lawns, but overwatering also comes disease and all that stuff. So if you get that into that thinking that you're overwatering, you're cause problems, so you don't back off.
Diseases in the grass and the soil.
They just gotta get them in the mind frame of they keep continuing with the way they're going, they're gonna have problems. So they'll hopefully back them off.
To answer your question, I think it's pretty much everybody, but it's also potentially that, again, that trickle down effect, downstream, down whatever, that it can also affect other flora and fauna out there too. Everyone sounds pretty generic, but it does have.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Not planting the correct ecotype of plant. And you can look at that from, if people aren't using plants that use less water, that might be taking away water that could be used by everyone else again.
You start talking water supply, and everything ties back to that big everyone again.
If we planted the correct plants around here that are native to this area, we could be using 50% less water on our landscapes or more, which that water would be available for everything else.
Yeah. I mean, it can also affect the homeowner or whoever's paying for that. If they planted the correct type of plant, they water less, the bills less. A lot of us complaining.
They could go,
Yeah,
they could
I mean,
go-
I
they
guess
could go,
that's-
they could go shopping again.
They don't have to know their lawn is off.
Yeah. I mean.
Lack of general drought education. Everyone? People don't think that drought affects them. Essentially just say the people that think that. I guess it's really everyone because.
People, they're green lawns.
Yeah.
People outside of agriculture,
Are the ones that think that drought don't affect them.
yeah.
But you all are here. You must think that drought affects you.
Cause you called it.
Because I emailed, I called.
I think that's right, it's largely those outside agriculture.
No, I think, I don't think, I think.
But their behavior impacts them.
But to be in this area, not,
I
people
see
that
that.
don't think how important agriculture is pretty amazing, I guess.
So people outside of agriculture.
Yeah.
Not being proactive about changing water use behaviors.
I think that one could be, pretty much everybody outside of the agriculture too, because it takes us so long. Even when people go in to buy a toilet, and the new toilets are 1.1 gallon anymore. You'll have people come in and say, I want you to find me a 3-gallon flush. I am not going to go down to that restricted use. It's just simple things like that they don't want to change their water usage because this is what I'm used to and this is what works.
And so that's everyone outside of agriculture.
And agriculture too, because sometimes we don't want to, the agriculture population doesn't want, they don't want to change it. Sometimes they're forced to change it.
Okay.
We're talking about proactive changes, though, I think it all, we could say everyone, if you wanted to, but I think it also comes back to another one, principal, or, districts, the cities, administrator, I mean, not being proactive to change that, well, proactive means somebody has to lead that. To me, that's more, administrative side in our community.
So it's more who.
Along with, when we say everyone, I think we just.
And when we did go through these droughts, you look at our parks, they were kept green.
And a lot of, on some of the parks, you couldn't go in parks because it was just a soggy mess. It's like, we're doing something wrong here.
Let's go to catch 22, people are gonna complain that they're not bright and green like they should be, but the city's trying to cut back on water and everything.
And that goes back to the one previous, that drought doesn't affect. Because as long as I'm in this square right here, everything should be green and whatever. Well, we don't have to let it die. Maybe it doesn't.
But they're not cutting back on water, like I was across from the parks, like they're running sprinklers all the time, they have to cut back,
Yeah. So I think with that, that's why I go back to, I think there's some proactive, since we mentioned that, not being proactive, there's probably some proactive things that our leaders could do to help with some of the mind, try to crack some of the mindsets they have.
Should we also add like the nonprofits or community organizations? Because you've been talking about trying to change people's ideas of what they do with stormwater and the toxins and what they put into the water and that kind of thing too. So municipalities from maybe the regulation end, but then also community-based organizations from just the education part.
Yeah, the open education and just how it affects everyone.
Lack of fire resistant landscaping.
That'd be trimming trees. I
So
wouldn't say watering them, but in dry, you're not really able to be doing that.
like the organizations though that would either be hired or responsible for trimming trees or, I mean, it could even be private firms, like for-profit businesses who are hired to do that type of work as well. So,
Tree services.
tree services is that a service that comes from a city or?
It could be city or it could be a private.
And in
Okay.
our instance, you know, it'd be private. But there in Nebraska Forest Service, they've got deals they're trying to push as well in our area to get those people to get everything fire safe.
Part of it too is just getting planners to even think that way. Whether that be business, local municipalities or the homeowner or whatever, just in that plan, I don't think it's even talked about, you know.
We've
I
got,
mean, it is, but it isn't, you know, I mean, it's not one of those first things I think, you know, we talk about fire use, you know, something that I'm not sure we can like, I mean, been seeing last couple of weeks, lots of things that are going on in communities and whatnot. And there's a lot of grass going in and a lot of things, and I don't think we even think about, oh, is there an alternative to that that would be drought resistant, fire resistant, that kind of thing. So I think could be clear into the planning stage. So.
They added planners, added homeowners, Nebraska Forest Service, tree services either private or from the city, landscapers, and again, private business.
I guess, you know, like when you talk about planning and stuff, Chadron State College has done a very good job of trying to use the runoff of their buildings and stuff. So they have built that into it. And, you know, they were there right there by the fire too. And I'm presuming they're doing fire.
They don't need to now, every tree burned.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to the south, there's
It's
no
not
trees
having
now.
to practice football.
Right.
So it was everything that was danger timber around them went.
But I know that they did a lot of swales and stuff like that. So they did plan that in so that all of their watering comes from their rooftop runoff and stuff like that.
So in addition to homeowners, maybe even
This is who was impacted by it.
yeah, I mean, we could just get lucky with everyone again.
Well-
I mean, like a public entities
I
or.
was gonna say the public safety side, like the volunteer fire, just if they go into an area and have a quick put it out and move on sort of thing, as opposed to having to deal with structure fires and all that because of climbing up through the trees into a house. That kind of purpose on all that is to plan to make everything as simple and easy as possible down there.
Local, the impact on the local economy and the trickle down to everything, every area. This one is the fire itself. The event of the fire and what it does to property, rangeland, wildlife.
It's gonna be a year or two at the most that you have that grass, you know, come back strong and thick.
That's right. So we said farmers, producers in relation to that one, didn't we? When we were talking about.
Mhm.
um, Property, where you can put homeowners, businesses,
Yeah.
property owners.
Yeah.
In regards to wildlife,
Just the habitat itself is temporarily displaced.
reduction in wildlife populations.
As far as direct impact, I'd say the outdoor recreation was sort of in the next one down where because of fewer people using the outdoor recreation, then that goes into a broader economic issue.
And the animal populations themselves.
Like you thinking people.
Yeah, animal and vegetation.
Here you said more into
Then you start hitting the
Local businesses.
Yeah.
And local communities have.
I'm not sure where it sits within this area. I'm more familiar with the Pine Ridge stretch, but up there behind agriculture, tourism is the number 2 industry. But when that drops, it is substantially. I don't know what it is. It's pretty, probably a little bit heavier on the manufacturing and stuff in this area. I'm guessing. Tourism, 3 or 4 or something like that.
It's still pretty good.
so, but like the entities that oversee this type of recreation. So again, the monument,
And the entities that oversee it are slightly impacted, but the bigger thing is all the mom and pop businesses that depend on those people being here. That's by far
yeah.
a larger hit to the town than
The small.
a handful of monument employees or something like that. Not to dismiss you, but
No,
the-
no, I understand what you're saying, yeah, and I agree with you. You look at the number of mom and pop businesses that keep opening and closing, that McDonald's can stay forever.
Yeah.
They're bigger, and
absorb that loss for a couple of years.
they can absorb that impact with.
Cultural mindset of unrestrained use. Use in regards to natural resources.
I'm trying to say everyone, because I don't think any of us really do as much as we could. I was on the way right after.
This one I think is similar to whichever one that you added, Dan, on to who regulate the use of resources. there's sort of the conflict there, the people who might want to use things however they want, and those who are trying to keep them from so really cities, municipalities. Regional and state authorities. Reduction in budget or funding for game and parks or conservation activities. I have game and parks as one party. Who else would do the conservation activities?
We do pay private landowners to open their ground hunting activities, hunting and fishing activities. There can be some, in fact, we've never had to cut back on that, but that's certainly potential. And with what we largely use those permit dollars for is, we're, for our own state-owned areas, we're going to the co-op and buying chemical, or we're going to the ag implement dealer and for implements or disc, or whatever the case might be, using all the local resources and stuff. And another share of it goes directly into private landowners' hands for habitat improvement on their own ground.
That's kind of where local businesses.
So again, it comes right back
Local
to
businesses.
and as much as possible, we try to use the locally owned stuff because we've got those relationships there. Loan shop going up.
Reduction in people coming to the lakes for water sports. And then we have the increase in those who come for beach-related activities. Let's deal with the reduction in people first.
Impact to local. Hotels and restaurants.
And then you have, again, like your little mom and pop bake shops, all those little entities.
These are the sheets that have the definition of impact and vulnerability. And then so now that we have kind of an idea of what populations these things would have, Sure.
That last one, you said, but an increase of beach, we're thinking, oh, more people are gonna come.
Mhm.
But more people come, you also have a chance, do more damage to vegetation that is there, whether that's,
okay,
critical species, you have more beach, you have more people cycling all over the place. Potential impact of that.
Within this area, does drought impact by your rock slide activity?
We're still trying to figure that out. There are indications that it does. We've identified, and we're not the scientists, this is all kind of in-house, but we're seeing the trend when we have a lot of rain, wind, and it gets really hot. Especially if those three happen to come along, and then of course, again, in the wintertime, when we have water and frost, we know that it affects roads, everything like that. But the guys have been tracking for a while, and those three things seem to, there's some trigger in there, and we don't know what yet. But
Probably not a big player overall, it's just a side question.
Yeah, it's interesting. there was some indication in 12, and it was so dry, but no, we did have more of that.
Do you want to put that on here, rock slides, or?
It could go into just soil management, soil erosion, because you're gonna, when the wind blows and it's dry, you're gonna
Yeah.
have soil blowing too.
That's fully the skin on every time I step out. In a few days, even the fresh fruits, I think I could feel it. So yeah, there's probably a soil erosion. This big one, because I know a lot of farmers, we don't plow, we do a lot of different things now. A lot of people do very light disking, and they don't, to keep as much material on the ground to hold as much soil as possible.
So
And the
farmers,
drought, that is even more important.
but also like for the purposes of recreational activities. In your case, or how would you term that?
Yeah, over time, I mean, it does help.
And leaving that covered does have some wildlife benefits as well.
Yeah.
That goes through their soil.
It could, and that part, it could affect your management decisions on specific projects, long-term types of things.
So I don't know if those definitions help you. For me, I just think of it as, do you have to go? All right, thanks for coming. We'll put, again, the audio recording online, and these will be typed up for you to see online too. I think of an impact as something that's happened, you can see it, it's been felt already. A vulnerability more as a pre-existing situation that is already sort of a challenge and would be exacerbated by drought effects, the heat, the lack of water, anything like that. So if we go ahead and classify these as impacts or vulnerabilities, and it might be that I need to reword them. It might be that I haven't wrote them up here correctly. So if it doesn't make sense as either, then let me know and I can try and reword it. You can see after that. The first one, restrictions on trail use or any sort of off-road activity. Is that something that exists now, it's an issue now, or is that something that would result specifically from drought?
More of an impact.
An impact? Reduction in visitors to the area due to lack of aesthetic appeal. And this was, specifically because drought has made us dry and brown and ugly and burned up potentially. Insufficient habitat leading to death in fish and wildlife populations or altered reproduction cycle.
It's probably more of vulnerability because most of the stuff he talked about is out there all the time. It just gets
Okay.
accentuated.
Pollinators are being affected by lack of water, flowers, food. And if we need to put both, we can do that too. And again, it might be in the wording. So this happening in general or this happening because of drought.
It's a pretty big concern all the time right
I think
now.
it says kind of general because you just depend on their boundary.
Local ecosystems being harmed or changed. And this one was specifically because of drought.
I think you're gonna add, if you added that away, I would say, maybe that.
Yeah.
And this one, I guess we added, oh no, lack of access to disposal of ag-related hazardous waste materials. If that lack of access is something that already exists, or if it's something that would directly occur because drought happened. No. Soil erosion, that needs reworded. I think management probably shouldn't be written in there. Yeah, just soil erosion in general. Disposal of the household hazardous waste. Lack of public knowledge of water sources. Overwatering lawns or over fertilizing landscapes. Overwatering, over fertilizing.
Vulnerability.
Not planting the correct ecotype plant. Do you want me to add leading to more water consumption?
Either way, it's probably a V. Takes place regardless of whether or not you're in drought.
Lack of general drought education. Sorry? People thinking that drought doesn't affect them.
That's a V.
No proactive, not being proactive in changing water use behaviors. Is the not being proactive something that results from drought, or is it something that exists now and is the challenge now?
It's a challenge now. I mean, it can be as simple as that one. Drive around at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and you see, sprinklers going. It's like, what good is humidifying the air a little bit.
This one though, when we moved it into drought, we said it turns into no regulation or restriction on watering. Does that change what it was here, or is it the same thing in just a different time period? The fact that we're in a drought and we're still assuming that we still don't have regulations.
We can still be a vulnerability.
Lack of fire resistant landscaping. The local economy being impacted and it affecting everyone. Fire in general. Sorry?
Impact. What?
Reduction in wildlife populations. You can specify if you need to.
I'd say all those are impacts because they're kind of a direct result of something.
Reduction in outdoor recreation opportunities and revenue. Cultural mindset of unrestrained use. Reduced budget or funding for game and parks and other conservation activities.
Impact problem.
Reduction in population coming to the lakes for water sports. Increase in people coming to the lakes for beach-related activities. That needs rewarded though. I think we'll leave that alone. So it's a positive thing. I mean, we could change it to say the harm done to vegetation or species because of more foot traffic at the lake, and that might be an impact.
No matter what, it's an impact.
Yeah.
So if you consider all of these together, are there ones, if we start prioritizing these, are there ones that sort of as a sector in regards to the environment and recreational activities, ones where you all would want to start that would be most important to address this one first and then kind of down the line from there? Or we can also start grouping them and come up with maybe 3 bullet points of the things where you need to start. And this again is to prepare you for going into those sort of cross-sector learning groups and the solution formation, so that you all will be split up into different groups with people from different sectors, but you'll have how you've prioritized things in this meeting so it's consistent no matter what group you're in. As a sector, you've decided that this needs to be looked at, and you can take that into the other groups. We can do it whichever is easiest. I can sort of number the points as they are here, or if you've already started to group them thematically in your minds, you can write those down.
I think we have several where we could probably group together and cut down the number.
Yeah.
Here, I think there's some that.
Tell me if I'm way off track here, please. Well, I'm trying to think of what you could do what you're looking for is how do you have a pre-planning, or what could you do to lessen the impacts of drought, right?
Both. I mean, the plan in the end we'll have that. It'll have our mitigation strategies, and then it'll also have, once we're in a drought, the areas that we couldn't mitigate for, whatever the impacts are, how are we going to deal with those? What are we going to do? But if you want to arrange them like that in regards to vulnerabilities, this is most important. In regards to impacts, this is most important. It's however you as a group think is best to approach this.
As I was looking at all the impact stuff, none of it's good by any means, but a lot of it, lower water levels, reduced vegetation, that sort of stuff. When it gets dry, that's going to happen.
Sure.
There's not a lot to do on that. But if you look at a lot of the pre-stuff and the vulnerabilities, for a planning purpose, in my mind, the two areas where you can have the most change in what's going to happen out there is addressing your vulnerabilities and planning for some mitigation when it happens.
Okay.
Just trying to say that rates aren't going to go down. So maybe it's how do you deal with your vulnerabilities and then how do you mitigate for your impacts? Maybe that'd be a better way of saying that.
The vulnerabilities are overall education.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
this is how it affects you. This is what you can do to change it. This is how you can protect your water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there any vulnerabilities that are not education related?
Over here, I guess. I mean, I see this. In the end, I guess you're still educating people. If we don't have bees, yeah, I mean, some of it just has to do with resources, you know. I mean,
I think in a vulnerability, you have a couple of things. And then you have still vulnerability within nature itself. And I see that addressed up here. You know, it's gonna, throughout the season, that goes on. You know, right now,
Mm-hmm.
is a lot different out there right now than it is when we start getting some rain. So even seasonality, we see some of the differences between the habitat and some of those things. Whereas some of these over some of the other vulnerabilities, kind of self-imposed, I guess what I'm just saying.
Which ones?
Well, we don't have a lot of control over some of this. We don't have a lot of control over some of this. You know, the vulnerability we do. You know,
The more education related
it's
ones.
back to the more education.
Okay.
with the bees and butterflies, I mean, that's a big part of education. The Guadalupe Center is
Right.
planting a rain garden and a pollinating garden,
Mhm.
which the pollinating garden, I don't believe takes a lot of rain. It's natural, native wildflowers and things like that.
As long as you're putting native plants.
Yeah, yeah. So that, I mean, that one can also be,
Yeah.
we can't control it, but you can tell this is how we can protect that.
Pretty much we need to start with education. And maybe this is a good time, we could break it down by the topics that you've been mentioning that are important. So if you want to start with education, then what topics do we really need to be hit in order to start preparing people for drought or to lessen whatever impacts could come were those people not to be educated? Let's see, I'm right on the bottom of the strategies. Drought in general. Fire. Disease. Stormwater. other topics within these that aren't there, but those are some of the things that you had mentioned that maybe aren't specifically covered. Watering practices. There are other topics that we had said before would need education.
To educate people on what's in that vegetation alternatives.
Okay, like native plants and
Yeah. Drought resistant, drought tolerant, I should say, not resistant, but drought tolerant. Just education on that. This is a lot of this.
so of those, are there ways to combine them? Are there ones that you think would be most important to start with?
We have public knowledge of water sources, where your water comes from, this is what a drought is. I don't know. They're very basic and very beginning.
Okay. I'm going to read a number of these later if they aren't in the right order, but so after that, if people had kind of a good understanding of that, maybe the sort of definition of drought, how would you flesh that out into the specifics?
Guess I'm looking at the education list. I mean, a lot of it is just, how to go forward, but it's, this affects me. Most people don't. I think that's a whole, because we can't really talk about, why do I care about stormwater? Why do I care about drought tolerant?
So you're saying regardless
So
of the
within
topic,
what the drought is, but it's also how does it affect? What does that affect? Maybe I don't know. Because you go, I'm just thinking. I haven't quite got all the pieces put together in my head here. But you look down through that list of education topics. Yeah, we can do all that. So a portion of the public's just going to go so. So I guess I'm trying to address that. So
Yeah, one of our three
why,
over there.
why, in the education, this is why it is important to you, because
so how each topic impacts the individual or group, whoever you're educating, it has to be connected with.
but there has to be a
Personal
connection.
connection.
There has to be a personal connection there somehow.
Right.
I think that's why we.
Other than let your yard go round, something right now.
can you break it down any more by group, maybe? You know, if all of the topics are sort of equally important, they all go into what drought is. But we're saying that making that connection between whoever you're talking to and that topic is important. And I'm just thinking, well, this is going to require a lot of different methods, a lot of different ways of speaking with different people. So are there specific populations that would be sort of the first step into how to tailor messages for those populations? In some of our, in the orange up there, in some of the populations, we had people that are not in ag as a group. We had homeowners, we had municipalities. If you use those groups, are there ways to condense them even more?
So
Trying to
I'm a little lost on where we're going to go here, I guess.
Well, this is
So,
still pretty
do we-
vague.
It
I
is,
mean,
I
up
guess
here,
that's what-
it's still, we got drought, that's important, we got people.
So do you want, that last one you brought there, individual groups, do we want to identify, say, the municipalities and say what out of those topics?
I'm not gonna make you go that far, because we only have about 15 minutes.
Right.
And we're all, our brains are just like,
No, I'm
we're
just-
we're tired of this, so.
Trying to figure out where
Yeah.
to help you.
The group, I mean, if you, and it might just be that what we have broken down here as far as groups is enough, like that's already distinguished enough for how you would tailor an educational sort of handout or something to them. And so if we want, we can just, for right now, see populations that are listed on the sheets. And then maybe as we go through the process, as you start talking to other sectors, you'll find that, well, they listed this group and this group, and you're already talking about similar or diverse groups, and you can do it at that point too. So no, I was referring to, you know, because we can break it down by topic, because they're all important, can you break it down into groups to make a more sort of efficient effort at getting to them? But
along the way, you get some groups that have key impacts there, but another thing, especially on the education side, you don't want to lose is that general group. I was saying, you're trying to think of somebody in industry that really is going to go strong no matter what happens. And I was thinking like the local hospital. So for an employee in the local hospital, why would drought have any impact to them? So in order to get your education message out, you need something that's going to hit that individual that doesn't stand any chance of losing a job, isn't going to have a lower income, but what's it mean on their daily life because of that?
Yeah.
so
How to reach them, I have no idea.
Well, that's what, how I always set it up is like, what, why, and how. So what is drought? Where are water sources come from? What are the effects of drought? And then why do you want this individual person or group of people to care about it? Well, you might lose your fire. You might lose your ground. You might, diseases. Your plants might die. The local economy. You're going to lose your job. You're going to
get your hours reduced
Yeah,
from
why-
40 down to 20 because we just don't have sales.
Yeah, and then address those specific things for that group. How can you keep your house from burning down? Well, don't plant trees so close. How can I, for the hospital person, how do I lower my water bill? Well, I plant native plants. I don't have to use so much water.
How to keep my lawn looking good.
Yeah, what do I plant? Do I plant buffalo grass? Yes, it doesn't green up till May, June, but you don't have to use as much water. Right? I don't don't know if then, is that the like, end goal is like, okay, so we have a little flyer for here, the general public, then we have a little information packet for landowners or, I don't know, that's how I typically set stuff up when I'm doing just general education to service groups is what, why, and
Okay.
how do I
Yeah.
fix this, solve this problem, protect our water.
And I think it's just good for, I mean, I wanted to consider it more because actually in every single group that we've conducted, it's all come down to this. It's all come down to education. And so I'm sure once you get with the other people, you're going to be talking about education. And so at least now you've already considered the topics, maybe sort of an approach, what is really important that you start with. So you already sort of are getting a picture of what that might look like in your own heads. And then I think it'll be even more helpful for you to come together with those other people, and you can keep going from there. I'm not going to make you keep talking about groups. So is there anything that we forgot though in thinking about this, anything that's come to mind that we don't have up there on the more individual impacts? And I'm sure throughout this process, we'll keep adding. We'll find something that maybe we missed today, and we can keep adding that way.
I don't envy you trying to make sense out of this one, let alone 6 others.
Well, half of the problem is my writing, and that's my fault, so.
I thought you were doing darn good on your writing.
It was kind of awkward. I did want to, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recordings now.
So you got the plug in